Hi, I'm Morgan from Green Acres Nursery and Supply, and today I'm going to teach you about how to plant pepper starters. There are many varieties of peppers, so the first thing to know is pick a pepper that you're actually going to want to eat. Some of them can be extremely hot, others can be really sweet. So if you're like me, Texas girl, and take the heat, be a little adventurous and go for something with high capsaicin like a habanero or even maybe a reaper. But if you don't like the heat, stick with something sweeter like the Aristotle or a sweet chocolate bill. So once you've got your peppers selected, you're going to want to choose a sunny spot in the garden. Nightshades really like a lot of sun, but also like tomatoes, they don't really love heat in the middle of the day. So you want to plant them somewhere high where they get lots of sunlight really early and the dew can dry. That avoids all the fungus and the bacteria that can come along with that. And then give it some rest during the middle of the day during the hot months. Down in the valley, I think that's probably June through August. You want to make sure they've got some shade from 12 to 3. So once you've got a spot selected in your garden, you're going to want to prep the soil. Peppers need a lot of nutrients to grow, like nitrogen. If you've got clover or oxalis growing in your yard or in your bed, go ahead and leave it. That's gonna splice more nitrogen into the soil and benefit the pepper. So that's a good companion plant. You can also plant basil. Basil's one of the deterrents for bugs and disease. And then I also recommend planting something like a squash. Squash will grow out in a vine pattern and kind of shade the soil from the midday heat and keep things a little bit cooler for those roots and give your plant some time to develop and grow without all the stress of the heat. So this planter is not great for planting actual tomatoes in your yard. It's not at least 12 inches deep. Ooh, 12 feet's a lot. Not at least 12 inches deep. So a planter like this wouldn't hold near enough water. You'd have to water 3 or 4 times a day to keep this wet. So when you're actually planting in the ground or in a pot, make sure you've got at least 12 inches of depth. More if you want really nice healthy roots. The looser the soil is around them, the better. So now we want to plant. Let's zoom in. When you're planting your peppers, you want to make sure they're flush with the soil. Tomatoes like to be buried all the way up the stem, but peppers not so much. They'll get root rot, or stem rot, if they're planted too deep. So you just want to make sure that the top of your soil is right at the level of the top of your garden soil, the pot soil and garden soil. Nice and flush. It's even okay if you can still see the top of the plant once it's in the ground. So there you go. And that's true of short peppers or tall ones. We'll go ahead and plant this one too. So we'll like to use a little bit of Sure Start. It's a transplant fertilizer that kind of fortifies your plant against the stress of being taken from its home and its pot in the nursery to a new environment. That'll keep it nice and healthy. And then get it down in there. Boop, boop, boop. Cover that root ball, but don't bury any stems or leaves down there. And then throughout the growing season, you can use the EB Stone tomato and vegetable food. About once a month throughout the growing season for good fertilization, and it'll have instructions for you on the back of the bag. So there's some debate about whether or not to prune your peppers. You can try these tips if you need to, or if you want to try something new, but they're not actually necessary. So if you want to just let your pepper grow, that's fine too. So in the early season, so we're going to do this pruning in 3 stages. The early season, which is the first month and a half, you're going to pinch the top of the plant off, just like that. That'll encourage new branching and more sturdy plant structure. And then after that, you want to remove any early peppers. So once the peppers start to bloom, the first few peppers that are produced, you want to just take them off. That'll encourage deeper roots. And then once it starts to get a little bit growing, you can take off side branches to give it a little bit more airflow. In the mid-season, you want to prune your pepper plants to limit pests by removing the lowest leaves, and that's these guys down here. And then you want to remove any damaged leaves or leaves that touch the soil once it's gotten growing to prevent diseases and limit their spread. And lastly, you trim off the suckers, which are these little guys right in here. You just pinch them right off, and that'll encourage a better plant form. And finally, in the late season, you want to take off extra leaves to get sunlight through to the plants that are growing down below them. And you'll want to top the pepper again by taking the top off to force the peppers to ripen and mature to their desired size and color with a little bit more speed. Okay, so when you're planning out your garden, try to keep your nightshades away from each other. Peppers are nightshades too, so they don't want to be planted next to tomatoes or eggplant or potatoes because they can share diseases and compete for nutrients. If you have to plant them together, make sure you rotate them the next season so they don't pass anything, pathogens along in the soil. So throughout the growing season, remember to fertilize once a month, and about 65 to 90 days after transplant, you should start to see peppers. Now you can tell when they're ready, when they've reached their full color that you expect. And they'll always have a little picture on their pot, tell you what it's supposed to look like. Once it looks like that, you're ready to pick. And with peppers, you don't want to yank them off the plant. You want to actually take your shears and cut the stem from the plant and leave a little bit of the stem on the pepper. That way, if they're not quite ripe yet, you can leave them on the counter to ripen up. And then watering your peppers throughout the season, it's kind of the same with tomatoes and a lot of garden plants really. They want to get at least an inch of water per week, which comes down to about once a day, maybe once every other day, May through April. And then June through August, you want to water every day for sure, and maybe even twice a day when we reach triple digits. And if you've got them in a planter, then you definitely want to water them once a day at least, twice a day in the hot months. The cool thing about a pepper in a planter, got a little tongue-tied, is that you can move that planter around to adjust for the sun. So if you're so inclined, then you can make sure that they get the sun that they need without the heat of the day. Okay, that's all I have to share about planting peppers. I'm wishing you success in the garden, and thanks for watching.